Maybe. Can you hear me?
We got 2 hours to do the gallon challenge.
Oh my gosh. So we want to welcome Matt Lorimer up here. He runs our hacker labs downstairs with a lot of the community events that we do. And we're very grateful to have him and super excited for him to be here. And one of the great things about this is Matt, of course, made a joke saying, I need lots of chocolate milk, so he got 2 gallons of chocolate milk. And I don't have a fridge for him, so he's either got to drink it or let it go bad. So there are a few cups up here, and I did check with building management, and they're cool with us drinking chocolate milk. So I'm not going to, with no few, how close are you, Matt? He's getting his video up. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt here, and we're already going to give him a hand. Let's give him a warm welcome for Matt.
So I'm serious when I say 2 hours, 2 gallons of milk, 2 gallon challenges. I have this thing, if there's chocolate milk, I drink it, whether I should or shouldn't. So we might get 45 minutes in, and the fill of the first gallon kicks in, and then we have a brief intermission while I take care of it. If you guys have not yet done it, you should all go to the Hackers Challenge board, the hackerschallenge.org site, and create an account. Is there anybody that does not have an account there yet? Okay. I'm going to mirror my displays and hope this works. Did you guys get your video splitter work happier? When I was in here at 10, the video didn't do everything. Okay, and you're recording and we're broadcasting, and all right. All right. I really need to close some things because too many people owe me too many return favors. I'm killing anything that might do a pop-up. Okay. Let's come here. I'm going to do a quick introduction. I'll run through, and this really is going to be, by workshop, this is literally a workshop. We are going to work together, we're going to have fun, and we're going to do things with each other. So that means I help you, you help me, and everyone comes out learning something. Let me start my slides really quick. While you guys are going through and getting those, again, if you're late, you need to get an account on the Hackers Challenge board game, because the labs do have, they have their own leaderboard on Hackers Challenge, and turns out we have hundreds of dollars worth of prizes and only like 3 people competing, so your chances of getting these hundreds of dollars worth of prizes is very high. Let's go ahead and get started. This is the hands-on pwning of the SAINTCON labs. Make sure you're in the right spot. Little background, a little bit about me and who I am. I'm Zodiac. I've been on the committee for, I don't actually remember how many years, somewhere between 4 and 6 or 7. Like Chris said, I do the community stuff downstairs. It's been a while since I've talked or presented, but I'm here. I got a bike up here because I would way rather be up in the mountains riding a bike instead of being inside, being responsible. Guess I'm kind of settling for being inside and somewhat responsible. I like to ride bikes because I'm a sucker for hot chocolate and donuts and chocolate milk. I put on this slide, I had to clarify we are in Provo, but true ice cream does not come from Provo. They are secondary. You want real ice cream, go to Logan and get Aggie ice cream, and I highly recommend the Aggie Blue Mint. I have facts to back this up. This isn't just a personal preference. If you look at the programs, the dairy sciences programs, from USU Dairy Sciences program, we had Asil Farr, who went on to form Farr's Ice Cream, and I forgot his first name, but the Snellgrove guy, he also is a USU Dairy Sciences product. I have not heard of any BYU Dairy Sciences products that went on to do anything with their lives. So there's facts to back my my preferences here. I do some red teaming here. That's the next bit here. On my job, that's one of my responsibilities is to help with a statewide higher ed red team thing to go around and do security audits and pen tests about the various institutions. I also do security operations and incident response at Utah State University. That's why I've got the USU bit there. SAINTCON, I've been on the committee forever. Last year, Pope and I got talking at B-Sides, and he came up with the idea, and we decided to kick off and go with DC 435. If you're in Logan, I highly recommend you come, first Thursday of every month. If you're in southern Utah and you still have a 435 zip code, you probably should have acted faster because we got it registered with DEF CON, and it's ours. But we will allow sub-chapters wherever you want to have them. So anyway, that's me. That's what we're doing. You should all have credentials from the Hackers Challenge board. Is anyone still trying to get into Hackers Challenge, get credentials? Do you need help or do you need time? So make sure that you do use the email address you registered for the con with. Eldon, am I going to get the big board instead of the regular board? Make sure you go to www.hackerschallenge.org and not just Hackers Challenge. You get cert errors. There are no subject alt names on that cert, apparently. If you go up here to game boards, you can see the SAINTCON Labs board. And this is what we're going to work on a little bit here. So inside of the game board, we are going to work on this Linux 2 column. And we're literally going to walk together. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk serious about this chocolate milk. If you want some, it's up here. I am not really doing the 2-gallon challenge. As fun as that sounds, I'm out. I will take some, but someone else needs to take some too. So we're going to really go through and just work on these Hackers Challenge together. So the first step we need to do is we need to come in here and request credentials. Eldon, did you add the 1 through 100 into the pool? Can I use 1? Anyway, don't add 1. That's what I'm saying. All right. I am going to cheat and use the back door in, but I will also show you guys how to get in the right way. If you go to bit.ly/hackslab or bit.ly or however the heck you say that, I don't know. bit.ly/hackslab. It will direct you to an Apache Guacamole login page to which you should have credentials. Does everyone have credentials from the game board? Did you see that here on the game board, the request credentials? Oh, sorry. I'm glad someone's paying attention. I usually go in the wrong way because it's easier for me. Shouldn't. No. Just put Zevlag for your Twitter handle. I wonder if he's doing any filtering on that. That'd be an interesting. Anyway, that idea did not come from me. I have no idea where that came from. Don't do it. That's a bad idea. You shouldn't know. So once you get your request credentials, we have fewer than 75 people in here, right? Kind of looks that way. Good. All right. And then we're going to Linux 2 for 100. And when you get in, you should get into when you come over to this Apache Guacamole, you log in with a username and password, lab00, whatever. It's an email. I should check. Does that email those creds to you? Password is in the element value. What are you saying? Oh. That's a feature. This is your version or 0.5 of your challenge for that. If you can figure out how to get your credentials, then you're good to go. If you can figure out how to get those credentials, then you're good to go. um, um, don't do that because that could be bad. bit.ly/hackslab. Are you on the, so you go over here to Game Boards, SAINTCON Labs, and then this request credentials, is that where you are? Did that finish provisioning it to have a new password for 01? Okay, I'm going to unshare my screen with you for a minute. Give me 2 seconds to get some information. Keep this. Sorry for the technical difficulties here. Yeah, in Chrome it works. In Firefox it's doing weird things. Okay. All right, now let me share this again. And we're back? No. Wait for it. Okay, now we're back. All right, once you log in, is everyone at this page with Guacamole? Have you made it this far? Oh, let's inverse. Who has not made it this far? Do you need time or help? I'm going to type it in here. Can you guys all read that? I can't make it any bigger, so. So who needs help getting to that point in? All right, give everyone just a second longer. If you're not there, raise your hand real quick. Okay, we'll give everyone just a second longer. If your neighbor needs help and you know how to solve it, reach over and help them a little bit. Once we're in here, go ahead and launch the VNC session. All right, this is the SAINTCON labs. You have a Kali box. Everyone has their very own Kali box, and everyone has their own segmented and private network that you're going to attack on. That means you have your own target machines. You can't break your neighbor's target machine. You can't cause any problems to them. You have your own island right here. And so whatever island you're in, that's your lab 001 or whatever lab you're in. You'll look on this box, and you'll see that there are two interfaces, ETH0 and ETH1. ETH0 is the management interface. Please, please, please don't do anything stupid on there. Like, serious, don't do anything on that interface. If we find out you're doing it, you might get kick banned forever. ETH1 is your interface for attacking. You have a static address, and other things will come and go. You'll notice from your little README that pops up right there, you can run this lab command. If you do lab-I for info, it tells me that right now I have the lab Linux 2 provisioned. There are 4 labs available. If I choose a different lab besides Linux 2, it will destroy Linux 2 and provision a new one. If I come in here, I do a lab-f Linux 2, it will blow away the current Linux 2 that I've got and provision a brand new one. So if I've done something to mess up my target, if I've broken the system that I'm attacking in some way, shape, or form, this will blow away the broken bits and bring in fixed bits. And you can switch between them. You'll notice that everything changes when we do it. So everyone here, go ahead and do just lab space Linux 2 and get that Linux 2 lab provisioned for your environment. By the way, if you're curious about how all this works and what makes this magic juju, how everyone gets their own island and how you can provision things, tomorrow I'm doing a talk about what drives these labs to make them function like this so that you can get this functionality out there. We're not really going to talk much about that. We're not going to talk about that at all today. So it'll take, please allow 1 to 2 minutes for all the VMs to boot. It has now provisioned the VMs and powered them on. They're booting right now, and it usually takes about 20 seconds, but we'll give it a minute or two. Is everybody provisioning Linux? Raise your hand if you have not yet started provisioning Linux 2. Are you close? Do you need more help? Raise your hand if you want help. I can go around to help too. Does this mic range work good? Are we the whole room? So who needs help? So had somebody asking, how do we copy? If you hit Control-Alt-Shift, you'll see a menu pop up on the left side of your screen, and that has a shared clipboard window for copying and pasting. All right, I think most people are in or close, so we're going to go forward a little bit. You guys all know how many characters are my password now. Dang it. So we're just going to go through this and walk through it like any old pen test. So any pen test you get there, the first thing you do, you need to work on recon. You need to figure out what's out there, what can you attack, what can you get data from, right? So you know which interface you're on. So let's look at the interface. I see that my IP address is 10.40.0.254, and it's a /24 network. So the first thing you're going to do to figure out what's out there is you're going to run a scan. And I'm going to sneeze, so hold on just a second. I don't want to sneeze into the mic because that'd be ugly. All right, maybe we're good. So we're going to just do an nmap scan of this whole network. When I do nmap for the first time, if I want to go quick and lazy, I love this top ports option. I'll just go through and say, show me what are the top 100 ports, and then put in the address range. So what I'm doing here, I'm actually going to add one more option. So if you guys are familiar with nmap, this should look pretty familiar to you. What I'm doing is I'm saying don't do a ping sweep, don't verify with ICMP if the host is up or not. That's what the capital P0 means. The top ports 100 means scan for the 100 most commonly used ports. And then I give it an address range, and it's going to scan 256 addresses and come back really quick. And so now we get to look at what's interesting in this list of ports. So I see SSH is there. SSH is mildly interesting, but it takes a little bit of work. I see SSH is here, I see RPC is here, I see Postgres, and so there's several places where we can start hitting this. We could start spraying credentials, we could start trying some other things, but I see NFS. I happen to know the guy who made these. If you still need help, raise your hand. So I know the guy that made these, so let's go ahead and start with this. The other thing I wanted to show you guys really quick, this game board it gives you direction. It helps you get going. So right here, they are mostly in order. So we're in the Linux 2 lab. If you want to be in the Linux 1 harder, or container lab, or recon, or wherever you're going to be, go to Linux 1 lab, 100. Let's share. See if anyone's willing to share with you. Well, I happen to know that NFS is a great way to share files. So the Hackers Challenge board is completely full of hints and suggestions and light encouragement for you to get going in these directions. So let's come over here and look at what is shared with NFS. I need fewer tabs. So before we can mount it, we need to know what shares are presented from them. And I always forget the command. So again, Google is your friend. It's been like at least 2 hours since I walked through these on my own, so I forgot 90% of it. I apologize that a lot of this was done early in the morning because I was trying to get it done ready for everybody. Show mount is what I'm looking for. So let's come in here and run the show mount command. And this is exactly how I expect everyone to solve these challenges. I don't expect anyone to know all the answers. That's why Google's there. Like, we're literally going to walk through these together. So let's do show mount and see what we can find on this So that's here on 10.40.0.5. Looks like I've got /serve/nfs. I want that one there. And lo and behold, they have terrible Nfs permissions. Totally just let me, does anybody know how NFS works? Are you guys familiar with this? NFS is the Linux version of Windows, Microsoft SMB file sharing. Permissions on NFS are handled a little bit differently. You give out permissions based on IP address rather than giving out permissions based on username. And then it uses the Linux file system permission to grant or restrict access based on user ID of the user there. So this just let me go and mount that. So this means I can totally look at some random share that is somebody's secret. If you guys aren't familiar, this lab is, it's clearly all Linux, but we'll be using a lot of Linux command line. If you don't know how to do this, that's why we're doing it together, to help you figure these bits out. The mount command here, the T is saying mount is file system type as NFS. I give it the target IP address, and then I put a colon, and then I do the target directory. That's the part I got back up here for the show mount. Show mount explorer 10.40.0.5 tells me, or export list tells me that these two exports, or that this one export is available on that server. And it also tells me that it is available to what address ranges can mount that export. Should I make this bigger? Ooh. Okay, on this random open file share, you see that we have already found the first flag for this Linux 2 Hacker Lab challenge here. These keys, you can take them back right over here and plug them into the game board and submit your flags. I'm not going to walk through that part of that. I'm going to walk you through how to do this and leave it as an exercise to you to submit the flags on your own. So usually these flags are helpful like this. They give you things like don't trust your neighbors because they're probably not good actors. Also, just because you're sitting at a port next to me on the network doesn't mean that I actually know you or want to share any information with you. So this is why authenticated shares are a much better strategy. So we've got that. The README had that information about the first flag, but let's find a little bit about this deploy script. Let's see what exactly it looks like. So you have to be a little bit familiar with Bash on Linux to understand this, but it should be pretty easy to decipher if you played with programming. Looks like we're adding a user. We're echoing the user and password to the change password program. So that means this script will create this username with this password. And we're adding that user to the sudo group, we're adding a sudo. So let's keep coming through. Setting up some public keys for SSH authentication. You guys all familiar with SSH public key authentication? So SSH has a way that I can pre-generate a key. And I generate my key, and then I sign it, and I can share my public key with anyone. And they can use that public key to communicate with me. And so if I try to authenticate and they have my public key and their authorized keys file, then I can connect to their server without a password, assuming my SSH key doesn't have a passphrase on it, which is another option you can do for security. Does this? Okay, so we're setting up SSH keys. We're reconfiguring how SSH, this SSH, Etsy SSH, SSHD is your SSH server configuration file. So we're changing a little bit some of the default parameters. We are permitting root login, yes. That means we can do password-based logins with root. That's a good thing. Well, that's, for our perspective, that's a good thing. For your real servers, this is a bad thing. You shouldn't do this. This is not good. So we're changing it. We're commenting out the one that says they can't authenticate. Okay, keep coming down. Setting up fail to ban, which is a firewalling and blacklisting service. UFW is a firewall service. Tell it it's all done and reboot. So, in this file, anything seem interesting that you want to try and use now? I have passwords. We come back out here. I have SSH servers, as you recall up here. I'm going to run that nmap scan again, but I'm going to change my options just a little bit. So I'm adding this OA to the nmap. If you're not familiar, what that does is that says output to a file. A means all formats. So if you look in my home directory, or actually, if you look in the mount directory on that NFS file share, which I probably shouldn't write it to, so I'll put it here. You'll see files that are all start with scan. So I have scan.g nmap, which stands for greppable nmap, meaning I can search it with grep. I have scan.nmap, which is just this exact output right here. And then I have scan.xml, which is the same data but in XML format. This is kind of handy because now I don't have to run nmap every time I want to go back and say, wait a minute, what's going on with this service? grep is a really handy Linux tool to find what's in a file. So if I take this greppable nmap file and say, where is port 22 open? I can see that 22 is open on 3 servers, but this one should look familiar, right? Yes. Give me 2 seconds to finish this train of thought. So you'll notice that this SSH that's open here is actually me. If you really want to attack yourself, you can, but remember that these tools don't just show the targets, they show everything. This is applicable if you are trying to get reconnaissance and information about a specific target. You can scan everybody out there and hit 20 targets and be hitting systems that are out of scope. If you're doing an audit or a pen test, you could be hitting systems that you or your clients don't own. So be very careful about what the scope you're scanning and make sure that you're hitting the correct systems. That's the reminder there. The nmap command, it's the same as before. The P0 is don't do a ping sweep, no ICMP checks. Top ports is the top 100 most common ports. The target IP address range, IP address masking. If you're familiar with that, the /24 means this. I'm going to scan 10.40.0, and then this one will be 0 through 255. And that's what the /24 just says scan. That's what that means, is scan that whole range. The OA is the output, all, and the scan is the base. So let's come back up here. And we've got these 3 hosts with SSH. The user is luser, and the password is unsent lunchroom figure. Lunchroom 5 figure, sorry. So let's just see what we can do with these. What was the point of it, or what was the command? That was this. I didn't. Here. Right here. Come on. Okay, so this SSHL user, I'm going to come grab the password again. The addresses are 10.40.0.4 and .5. And I'm just using these usernames and passwords from that deployment script, remember? But by the way, if you have questions, it doesn't make sense. If I'm going too slow, too fast, this is, the point of the workshop is to work with you and have you give me feedback and tell me what to do. So I will go as far as we can in the 2 hours, and if that means I spend all the time explaining how to do it, I don't know how many of you guys came to my CTF talk this morning, but the whole point of CTF is participate to learn, not participate to win. That's my personal viewpoint on these. I made these to teach you, not to get you points. So if you don't understand it, then we're doing it wrong. So let's work on it together. Can I what? Slow down? Okay, no, that's good. I forget that all of my tricks and shortcuts everyone else doesn't do. If you want tips and tricks, I can tell you some of the things I'm doing that make my life happier. For instance, Linux has the single greatest feature in the entire world, which is you'll notice that when I want to do something, so like for example, this password right here. I double click on the password and it's all highlighted, and Linux has 2 clipboards. I can right now hit Control C and copy this, well, Control Shift C in the terminal, and copy this, or I can just use the highlight copy buffer. And so right now, if I want to type that into here, if I middle click, I have now just typed whatever's highlighted is typed in there. Password box is a bad time to do that. I'll show you here. So like I just double click on this kernel version, and then if I middle click, it'll type whatever I have highlighted. No copy and paste needed, just middle click of what's highlighted. Super handy. You'll notice also that as I'm doing commands a lot of times, I'll use my Control R, which does this reverse search. And that's a good way to find. I like slowing down because it gives me a chance to eat the ice cream I brought in here that I was going to eat before I started, but I was too late. Okay. So is everybody in the Linux box now? Did you get the NFS? Were you here when we did the NFS server? So you're on the NFS mount, right? Did you run the mount command? If you run df -h, do you have /mnt still mounted? I'm not even sure who I'm talking to over here. Who's looking for the password? So so when you run df, do you still have that NFS share mounted? We good here? All right. And then if you look on this /mnt, ls is list files. You'll see this deploy.sh. And you'll see the other files that I accidentally created there that you don't have, but I do. It's okay if yours looks a little bit different. Cat is a way to just say, whatever's in this file, type it out to the screen. Or a little bit easier for us here is head. I just want to see the top of the file. I want to see the head of the file. So here's that username and password. Do you guys all have the password now? Again, that the reverse search that I'm using here, if you just hit Control R, it'll put you in this reverse search mode. And you start typing whatever command you want, like I did Control R and typed SSH, and it searches all the commands I've typed before for ones that include SSH somewhere in them. Oh, no, and so are we all ready to go into the box? Anyone need a second more to get the password or the mount or anything? You guys making progress? You just need time or help? Time? Okay. Oh, that's a really good point. If you want to sync this clipboard with your local computer, if you hit Control-Alt-Shift in Guacamole, you get this handy little menu that pops up on the side. Control-Alt and Shift at the same time. You'll notice that this now has my clipboard inside of the Guacamole box is on this clipboard, and I can take this now and copy this into my local system. And this is how you sync the clipboard between the Guacamole client and your local device. Which part? So that's just I was just showing how it worked here, but the Control-Alt-Shift, it's a little bit wonky in that it's not a smooth transition from one to the other, but it's possible, which is really handy with some of these keys that or flags we'll be getting through the labs. Are you guys, is everyone in here, how many of you are familiar with Kali and have done things like this before? How many of you, this is your first time doing any sort of a pen testing, red teaming type of thing? Great. I love it. Please, please don't be afraid to ask me to slow down, because I feel like I'm going, I don't know what the right pace is, so help me find it and communicate whether I'm going too fast or too slow. When you have this Guacamole menu up, if you hit Control-Alt-Shift again, it'll go away. All right, so let's go into this other box. So you'll see here I got another flag. So let's compare this to where we're at over here back with the game board again. This hopefully helps you guys get your own skill set on how to be more successful. So, this sounded like a good idea, this ice cream. It wasn't. Conveniently, it came with a nice bag, though. All right. So we did the let's share. Set me up, Scotty. This was one of the other ones that you found, where you found some credentials, right? This next one is under the doormat, and I'm making sure I don't get these confused. Hey, Eldon. Under the doormat is the one that I talked about before, right? Where you leave your keys. No. Is that elsewhere? Okay. Okay, that's what I was thinking. All right. So these are they're mildly obscure clues on purpose to not literally tell you what to type and do on the Hackers Challenge board, but they should lead you in the right direction, and that's the idea. But if you ever look at these clues and think, what in the world are you people talking about? Excuse me. This is why we're set up downstairs in the in the community area. There is a table for these labs, and we're happy to help you, give you more clues, give you answer questions, or go onto Slack and SAINTCON. Is everybody in the SAINTCON Slack? If you're not there, raise your hand. Do you know about the SAINTCON Slack? SAINTCOMs? Like that. If you go to that website, it is an easy auto-join Slack channel. Anyone's welcome to get in there. Once you're in the Slack channel, you can then talk to people. I am not going to launch my Slack because all the direct messages will pop up, and some of them will probably be appropriate, and some of them I don't know about. Turns out when you do that to other people in their presentations, they're looking for excuses to pay you back, so I don't dare launch mine to show you what it looks like. Anyway, if you go to saintcoms.slack.com, there is a channel that is it underscore or dash? Oh, it's renamed from Hacker to Saint? Saint Labs. Last year, I think it was Hacker Labs, and anyway. Either way, I don't care. Go to Saint Labs in this channel, or in this Slack instance. There's me, Eldon, Scotty, and a couple other guys that help create the challenges. By the way, this is Eldon, and I'm the one talking, but a crap ton of the work was done by Eldon. So if you like the labs, tell Eldon you appreciate what he did. It was no small feat and no small amount of time that he put in to do this. What's that? Oh. I would love to help get your passwords. Can I sit down for a little while at your computer? So the key, or the hint for this next one is, it's called under the doormat. And so the idea is, think about what kinds of things you put under doormats. We're trying to get access to things. We put keys under doormats. If you're not sure of where to go with this, then think a little bit, or start going through the thought process of keys and doormats and access. Well, you heard me talk a minute ago about SSH and how you can have SSH keys, right? So let's come in here. In Linux, everything, all config files, or all configurations are stored in a file. Windows has a registry and it's all in there and it's kind of crazy. In Linux, everything's a file. The file system has, there's your, ls is your directory command. It says, show me the contents of this file. And if you look, it says that there are no files on this device when I type ls. But there is what Linux does is it will, any file that starts with a period is a hidden file, and it's hidden pretty terribly, but basically that just means it doesn't show up when you run ls normally. But you see we've got this SSH directory. This is where the current user's direct SSH information is stored. And you'll see that I have IDRSA, IDRSA pub. This is those keys I was talking about. This IDRSA is my private key. This .pub is my public key. If you're sharing these with someone to get access to their system, do not give them your private key. No one ever, ever, ever needs your private key. That is your password to get into the remote systems if you're doing key-based authentication. And then you see this known host file. What SSH does is as you connect to different devices, it stores a hash of the remote device's signing key so that you can verify the authenticity. So this way, this file is used to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. If I'm talking to your device and all of a sudden the key changes to something else, then I know that I'm not really talking to you because the key's not the same. Servers don't generally change SSH keys. So let's look at this and see if we can find anything. There also is this little trick that will make this, anyway. You look at this and you get really hopeful thinking, oh, this is all of the SSH keys. It is. This is exactly the SSH key. The problem is, by default, Linux now hashes the known host key to obfuscate it to prevent people from doing what we were just trying to do and say, what hosts have you connected to? But conveniently, we know from our port scan back up here, we're currently on 4, which had SSH open, but it looks like 5 has SSH open too. And we have to guess what user it is. Generally, oops, that's the wrong clipboard. Generally, by default, SSH does not allow root-based login except with the key. So let's first try the user and see if that goes. And it turns out that if I use the same username to get in that I logged into, that I found through the deployment script, I can still log in. Let's see if we can do it. We can try root and see if that works. Do you guys understand what I just did to get into there? Does that make sense, or is this crazy juju that? So root is asking me for a password. The key is not working. Is everyone now on Linux 2 server? Have you made it this far? Don't be afraid to raise your hand and say you need help. Like, this really is a time for us to help you. After this, we're just going to let you free and say, go have fun in the labs. The other thing that you may have missed from my CTF talk this morning is I talked about how in order to be successful with things like this, you need to not be afraid to ask for help. You need to walk up and say, hey, I don't know you. My name's Matt. Can you help me with this? Or sit down in the hacker labs in the couches down there, and in that hacker lounge, on the couches. And while you're in that area, listen to people and be like, hey, I'm about to start that challenge too. Or jump on Slack and say, hey, I'm going to start Linux 2 for 200. Who's ready to start that wants to work on it with me? So work together as we're doing these. What's your? Okay, how many people are waiting for help? If you're caught up and willing to help the guy next to you, then let's do that wherever we can, just to keep it flowing a little bit. All right. If you are not yet on the server, raise your hand. All right. So we now have another flag to submit to that game board. let's come back over here and look at the game board and see what things look like. So we did the under the doormat. They left the key for us under the doormat. Next one is needle in a haystack. Oh, that's needle. Next one is needle in a haystack. So it depends on, the description is depends on under the doormat, so we have to be on the Linux 2 server, right? So we have to be SSH into it because we had to use that key to get on there, but now we need a needle in a haystack. So what are we looking for again? We need flags. This is one of the things that we're trying, the purpose of all of these labs is to show you how to think like an attacker, how to think like a miscreant, how to seek out and find valuable information, data, targets, and other things. So this needle in a haystack, you want to see what you can find that looks interesting. So we're going to what I'm doing here is I'm saying find on the root file system, search every file there is everywhere, and then I want to look at the output of that file, ignore case, -I is make it a case insensitive search, and I want to search for the word flag. This tells me if there's anything named flag. If I were actually a miscreant, this might be find star SSN star. This might be find. There are a couple other syntax things that find star SSN star was a different syntax for it, but in this way it would be find /pipe grep -I SSN. Pipe grep -I credit card. Pipe grep -I passwords. Because this is a game and we're looking for flags, let's search for flags. You'll see that a lot of these things aired out and said permission denied. On the file system, I don't have access to everything there because I'm just a user, I'm not root. And some things like the proc file system in Linux, literally everything is a file. Your video card is a file. Your sound card is a file. Your hard drive is a file. There's special files that are handled in special ways, but I can look at processes running on the system. They have a file entry in your file system. And so find does weird things on some of these /proc /sys, some of the systems that have the weird Linux files on them. So you'll get some output like this often that looks a little bit wonky and doesn't make sense. To clean up my output, I'm going to do, that's what I meant to do. I'm going to get rid, shouldn't that work? Oh, thank you. I was like, wait a minute, this should clean out my input. This is another Linux trick that it's totally unnecessary. I'm just doing it to clean up the output so that it's easier to read. So I did this just so you know, and it doesn't confuse you too much. Dev null is a special file on Linux that says whatever comes here, just throw it away. I don't care. Any data that gets sent to this file, I don't want, and just delete the data immediately. Drop it. And this 2 greater than, less than, greater than. That says Linux has different outputs. It does standard out, standard error, standard in. And standard out is 1, standard out, or standard error is 2. I'm saying take standard error and that greater than redirects it to dev null. So if it's an error message, just throw it away and I don't even want to see that it existed. It's kind of a nice trick for things like that. I thought this one was named flag, Eldon. Oh. This is better. So the first step was to see if we had a file name like that. We found no files. These files here are normal files that don't look too interesting because they just exist within the file system. You may not know that until you've actually had experience and exposure to Linux, but for the sake of time and to keep from going down rabbit holes and getting distracted, there's nothing exciting in this output. So next we want to look inside of files and see the content of files and see if anything happens to have the word flag in the file. This is going to be bigger, so I am going to I am seeding your data here to simplify the search and keep you from having to search. It's not very big, it's only 2 gigabytes, but rather than searching 2 gigabytes of data, I'm going to seed your search with a root directory of etc. And I've got the same problem as before. Oh. So I, again, is ignore case. R is recursive, go into subdirectories. But I'm getting permission denieds again. All right. I found the word flag a couple of times in here. Most of these look okay. AppArmor, grub, user add, htparm, message of the day. Okay, I think we've seen that one though. We've seen that one. SAINTCON 2019 README. Because I did the -I, you'll see that my search was for lowercase flag, but it found an uppercase flag because of, again, the lowercase I, or the -I. So we found the next flag here. This is showing you that as a miscreant, as you're in this attitude, the first thing you do, we as defenders, as blue team, is really get excited and be like, we need to protect domain admin. I need to protect this system here. As a miscreant, I don't care at all if I get domain admin. Domain admin's the easy button, so I want it. But honestly, if I can find some secretary that has an export of all of the of last year's W-2 forms, which I found, that's way better than domain admin to me because I have social security numbers, addresses, birthdays. I have everything I need to sell identities online. They care about data. We as defenders care about systems. And this is to help you remember and remind you a little bit to focus on the data, not on the systems. So we've got our next flag, so let's come back over here. Okay. Depends on set me up, Scotty. So again, that's telling us we're already on the server. We want to be there. Anybody know what sudo is or sudo? Oh, you're right. That was the setup script. Sorry. Eldon's paying attention. I'm not. Superuser do is a command on Linux where everyone's familiar on Windows. You get the pop-up. Would you like to run this application as an administrator? Yes or no? Sudo is the same thing, but you have to say it before you run the application. You have to say, run that application as somebody else. Generally, the somebody else is root as the administrator account. So this is saying something's going on, probably with sudo, and on the client machine. So let's go back to the client machine. And there. Anyway, so sudo is the command. It looks like this. Su for superuser do. With sudo, you can do -l. You can run a whole bunch of different commands with sudo. The default is when you install Ubuntu and most operating systems, They just put all of the users in the sudo group, and all users can run all commands as root. They just have to give their own personal password first. And that, you give your own password to make sure that, like, if I get up and walk away from my computer and you sit down at it and you use sudo, you can't do anything because there's one more layer you have to know my password. But let's do -L. It shouldn't matter where I'm at. It's the same. And it tells me user L user, which is me, may run the following commands on Linux 2 client. And how many of you guys paid attention to the news and heard about sudo last week in the news? You'll notice it was really played up, and I was pretty sensational about it for a while. If you're familiar with sudo and you look at this, you'll notice this is a pretty stupid configuration for sudo. Sudo is really cryptic and doesn't make a ton of sense. This says all users can run programs as anyone other than root without a password, but we've restricted it to bin bash here. Sorry, all users can run programs not as root. They can run bash. Oh. Oh, sorry. So we can be anyone other than root is the short version, and we can run bash. The vulnerability that came out last week, it's I have to have a percent in pound -u pound -1. There is a buffer rewrap. What do you call that? It's not an overflow. It's a if I tell it that I am user -1, so in Linux, all users have a user ID, and all of the user IDs are positive. But if I have a weird configuration and I tell it I'm -1, and I want to run this command that they told me I could run, then it does the magic boot and says, hey, look, you're actually -1 overflows to 0, or wraps to 0. Which then makes me root. So you'll look here, and I can do, who am I? I am root. Because of the way this works in the directory it drops us out in and how that part goes. So now we can get in here, and we get the flag for becoming root on the system. Are we going the right pace? Are we good? Faster, slower? Good? Okay. Are you guys learning anything, or are you just following along and doing the same thing? Are you getting points or understanding? Because if you're just getting points, let's ask questions and get you understanding too. Let's make it as useful as we can. What command, does your command look like this? Which one, what do you mean? That is the buffer overflow that they came out with sudo. So you have to have this really obscure, weird connection of I'll let you run commands as anybody except for root. And then with this command, you can obscure it and get so you can run it as root also. Yes. So the exploit sounds really, really scary until you realize just how obscure and like I have never in my life seen a Linux box set up this way. I'm sure clearly somebody has it because they found it, but it's obscure enough that it sat there for decades and no one caught it. But functionally, it's to say that we're saying user number. All right, so did you guys all come in here and see the flag in here? Become root with sudo. Cat that flag dot or /root/flag. Come back here to the game board. How do you say SQL? So remember, we had a SQL server on the other box, right? So we know something somewhere is running SQL. That was how did I do which one? Control-Shift-T. And now I just have, it's tabbed terminal up top. And this way I can bounce between them. So I know that we're running a Postgres database on 40.5. So that's probably where I'm going to attack. But we can think a little bit about how are we going to pivot from there. Most of these labs, if you think they are, not always, but for a large part, they're built sequentially. They're built to start at the beginning and go through it. So let's see if we can find anything. Which one? Okay. This is one that I was burning other fires. All right. So you'll look here. How do you find history? I remember now where we're going with this. So I showed you the Control-R command, right? How I can search through my history and I can look at things I've done. This data is stored in this bash history file. Thing is, it doesn't just store what I've done through this session in SSH. It stores what I've done through all sessions on this system. Sometimes you get concurrency issues if you have multiple sessions open, but generally this has every command you've run on that box. I'm going the right way, right? Okay. So you can also run the history command like this to see everything that was ever run there. And you can see the things I've done. Here's the sudo I used to escalate. Here's SSH going into the other box, looking at some things. But it looks like my history, the start of my history is pretty interesting. I have done, I've run Postgres from here. And it looks like somebody put the password right in front of me. And I have a database name too. So let's just try that exact same thing. Let's see what happens. I can copy and paste what's here, or another Linux shortcut here. You notice how there's a number before all of these commands on the side. So there's 6, 7, 8, 9. I can do Control-R and search my history for this PSQL command. Or another thing I can do is I can put exclamation point and then the number at the beginning of the command. So I do exclamation 1, and that runs command 1 in my history. You'll see it types out the command it's running right here. It ran it, and I am now connected to the database server over there because it was a valid command when it was run before. Back here, if you just type cd all by itself, it will go to your home directory. Yeah. Okay. So that we're luser at Linux 2 client. You do cd and you'll go to the root directory. You'll notice the bash history, or anywhere you're at, you can just type history. You don't have to be in the root directory to get this output. And we know that we want command number 1. Command number 1 drops us off in Postgres. This is where my Postgres, my database foo is terrible. So in here, we have data and extra credit. And this is like the extent of my SQL skills, so be generous. I see that there's two tables in here, and I just want to see what information I can get out of these tables. So I want to select everything. And that just says grab all the data from the table. Sweet, there's another flag. While we're here, there's another table. Let's see what we can do, right? Dang it. Not a 2-for-1. Let's keep going. So now I am on the SQL server. Yeah. Which one? Okay. So the /d is what I did first. To get the description of the database to see what's there. Sorry, I said slash, I meant backslash. We got the data we could out of there. We've done sudo, right? So this next one says sudo make me a sandwich. Well, let's see. We've already run sudo on this box. Is there sudo on another box? We can get over to the other system, right? I need to get the password again so I can log in to the other side. Oh, yeah. You're right. You're right. Again, when you're doing anything with sudo, the best thing is to do a sudo-l. What can I do? List the commands. Anybody here familiar with Vim? AKA the Hotel California of Linux. Everyone gets into Vim, and if you've never been in there, you're going to hate it and you're going to swear. You need to know escape:*Q. You probably want to write that down if you've never used Vim. Escape:*Q. What's that? Or X. If you don't know how to exit, you definitely don't want that. So Vim is a text editor that is command line based. And once you get over the learning curve, you will never use another editor again without swearing at it and being pissed that it doesn't work like Vim does. But until you get over that learning curve, you swear at Vim for working like nothing else in the entire world. Unless you're an Emacs user, in which case the door's back there. So looks like on this box, I can run not Vim, but VI as anybody. So let's try it as root, right? I'm just going to grab this whole command from that sudo-l. And this is something that you might do because your database, your DBA wants to get access to update a configuration file, or a web guy wants to be able to edit your apache.com for your nginx.com for whatever file you've got. Which user and host are you on? What is your... Okay, so you need to do Control-R SSH. And then hit enter. I'll let Eldon help you because I'm confused now. Oh, yeah. So here I'm going to run VI as root. That's what, remember we talked about sudo does things as different users. So this lets me come in here and edit this file. This is something that's pretty common. You will have database users and other people do this. Problem is, what's going on? Yeah. Which server are you on? Did you write the whole? So you can only run one command as root. You have to have the whole user bin vi etc SAINTCON 2019.conf. If I change and I do vi etc SAINTCON 2019, you'll notice that it doesn't work. Okay. So sudo is kind of cool in that you can specify you can only run this command with this argument, which is cool, and you think you're pretty secure, right? Because you can't edit any file. I'm not just giving you the editor, right? So your DBA gets in here and edits your configuration file. Let's come over here, find your flag. And let's say king me. So while we're in VI, let's remember who owns the process that's running VI right now? Root. This is an administrative process. If only I could make VI do something other than edit files. Someone's played this game before. Oh, come on. You have to remember, not only are you giving them access to that program, you're giving them access to anything that program can do. And so I just used this text editor to become root and get a full interactive, everything I want root shell on the system. What's that? So inside of root, you do a colon, or inside of VI or Vim, you do a colon. Colon is the command interface for VI. It's how you do searches. It's how you do replaces. You can do a lot of things. You can set to get rid of the stupid mouse mode that they've changed VI to use because someone's a sadistic moron. If you know what I'm talking about, you totally know what I'm talking about, and you also hate whoever made this choice. Is that true? Does anyone know what I mean by this? Good to hear. So he said, if you didn't hear, he said most plugins and most editors have a Vim plugin or a Vim mode that you can put it in. And you said the Google Studio one is particularly nice. Oh, Visual Studio, the VS Code one. I am a little bit ashamed and shocked to admit how much I like VS Code on Linux. Don't let that get too far out there, but it's much better. I started using it to prove someone how bad it would be and how much I would hate it, and then I didn't have any hate to share, and I was pleasantly surprised. So once you're in here, you do the bin bash. And there you get that last flag. You have now totally walked through 2 complete Linux servers, all based on misconfiguration. You got full administrative access in 2 Linux servers in actual configuration errors that I have, well, with the exception of the sudo bug from last week, actual configuration errors that I have seen on production systems in my environment or someone else's. These are things that we need to watch out for and do. And the whole point of these labs is to teach you these things, to say, it's not always out-of-date systems. One of the labs has some out-of-date systems, and it shows you how fun you can have with some of the out-of-date plugins if people aren't running patches. But really, security is not, I run patches, I'm safe. Security is, I run patches, and I have a secure configuration, and I audit my configurations to validate that all the systems are in compliance with my configuration, and I have endpoint response or endpoint EDR or some sort of endpoint protection to monitor that, and I audit my logs, and I watch my traffic, and security is layers, and if you're only doing one piece of it, you're not doing all of security. And so I hope that you guys can come in here and learn more about these things. We've totally cleared out that whole column on the game board, I think. You guys have all done all of Linux 2 now. You guys all should probably be reasonably close and reasonably high on the leaderboard. That means you're all reasonably close to some fun prizes. I would encourage you to keep working on these, keep going. All that I was going to do was make it through that Linux 2 column, so we've covered everything I wanted to in here. Do you guys have more questions, more things you want to talk about? What do you want to? What's that? Yes. Oh, it can be anywhere. You can play this from your hotel. You can play this from your home. Oh, I see what you're saying. I misunderstood the question. Yes. Containers is downstairs with Victor Villa from Open West, if you know who he is. He and Corbin are doing a container security thing that you do have to be physically present downstairs for. Wireless is an SSID that is broadcast downstairs. Do you have any other questions, comments, thoughts? You've rolled through the first lab. I showed you at the very beginning, if you just hit Control-D a few times, you can back out of where you're at. Control-D is the same as exit or quit. It's into file. So we have to peel back all the layers and get all the way back to the Kali box. Once we're back to the Kali box, remember it's lab-I to get the information about where we're at. If you want to do another one, go ahead and hit Linux 1. And you'll notice now that everything I had before is blown away. All the virtual machines are gone, and there are new virtual machines in their place. If I run nmap again, I get completely different results because it's new target machines. If you are a little bit more on the beginner side, I would recommend you not go to Linux 1 next. Linux 1 is totally doable, and you can find all the information, but it is a little bit more of an advanced than some of the other ones. The Recon one for next is a great one to do. It really just walks you through a lot of ways to get Recon and say what services are there and what data can I get out of these services. You don't do as much compromising of the remote system. You do more gathering data from exposed services. This 81, don't do that one because we need to finish a little bit on it. You can do the first few steps, but the last steps aren't working yet. So wait an hour and then do 81. And this 81 is pretty similar to Linux 2. It's just walking through a Windows client and a Windows server. And again, that's a 2019 server and a Windows 10 client, both fully patched, fully up to date, but you can still walk right through them and get straight to domain admin. Walk being a relative term, I guess. That one's not ready. We have to fix a bug in it. You can get onto the client box, but you can't get into Active Directory yet. We'll put that in Slack when that's ready to go 100%. Do you have a question? There are prizes for, so this game board is just like the regular Hackers Challenge game board. And there are leaders of the game board. So right here, you can see who's doing what and where they're at. Overall game ranking, data bean is Brent Hunsinger. He's currently in the lead. Is this SAINTCON or whatever? Are you in here? I talked to him a little bit yesterday. Anyway, you guys are probably all, I'm guessing you're all these 850s and 800s right here. And you're totally within striking distance. You're 6 puzzles behind the first place person. And that's just the Recon one. The Recon is roughly the same difficulty as the one you just did, the Linux 2. So you guys are not far out of the lead. So you have chance, you have a good chance if you put some time into this. And the prizes are, I don't actually remember. One of them, I got prizes for 3 different things. And I'm worried if I tell you which prize is which, you'll get mad at me because you're like, no, you said that was, because anyway. The prizes are good. They're all things I wanted to own. First place prize is like $130, $140 range. Second place is like they go down from there, but you're not winning the lottery, but you go home happy. So keep working on this. Get your friends to do it. Work together. I still say, even if the most important thing is not the prize, it is finding the guy next to you and say, hey, let's just go back and work on these together. You seem, you and I, our skill sets complement each other. Let's work together and figure these out and get going. I think, for me personally, I think that the biggest sell of the con is the connections you make, and the best way to make connections is to go hole up in some corner with somebody and put your heads together and fight through something that neither one of you really understands, but between the 2 of you and Google, or the 4 of you and Google, or however big your group is, you figure it out and you get through it. And I've developed some great friendships doing things like this, and I highly recommend you do the same thing. Like, it's an awesome thing to do. So, other questions, comments, thoughts? Yeah. We absolutely give hints. If you're lost, come talk to us downstairs in the SAINTCON labs, or talk to us on Slack, or however you can get a hold of us. And it's like I was saying about Zevlag today in my presentation. The whole reason we do this is to teach people. We want to see people learn and grow. And laughing at you does not help you learn or grow. It just helps you get pissed. So when you're stuck, that means we're not doing it right. So tell us, and we would love to fix that for you and help you grow and help you figure these things out. All right. No other questions. Thanks for coming, everybody. I hope you learned something. I hope you had fun.